Hi everybody, I'm so sorry I'm late. I was finishing up a couple things. I'm so sorry. I was also trying to figure out if I could stream live on multiple services. I haven't figured that out yet, but I will soon in the future. So I wanted to share a couple things with you today. First of all, today is like a huge deal in my world. It was... So about 2.5 years ago, the truth about my life and my story finally really started coming out. The truth about abuses I suffered as a child, that my children were also subjected to betrayals, of my family, learning just about a lot of things that I'd been lied to about my entire life. So one thing that you have to know about psychopaths and one thing that you have to know about narcissists, especially narcissistic parents, is they are compulsive liars. And I knew this my whole life, but as the scapegoat, and so that's part of like the language of narcissism, is if you're the scapegoat, which is very commonly, called like the black sheep or, the misfit or any of those things. It is the person who refuses to kind of like obey the rules of a toxic household or toxic parenting. So there are rules that surround narcissists, of course, right? In all abusive households, there are major rules. And you don't know this until you kind of like start understanding and figuring it out. And for me, a lot of it was that I had to research myself. Like Polly, the woman who gave birth to me, she cannot tell the truth for any reason. I mean, just nothing. She just is not capable, and that's how she's always been. The other thing is that narcissists, they have zero empathy, no compassion whatsoever, and they take no responsibility or accountability, like at all, okay? And so nothing that happens in their life or family is therefore their fault. But for the scapegoat, I was the scapegoat, the misfit, the black sheep, all of those things, everything is blamed on you. And that is, I found out that even before, like, I was in kindergarten, the stuff that my mom was blaming on me was like just disgusting. She was bringing me into bed with her and other men and all the stuff, and then like accusing me 5 or 6 years old, like seducing men. Like, it's just, that's like not even possible, okay? But anyway, I found all of this out later. So the scapegoat is the person who will not feed into like the rules of the household. And I don't mean like doing like chores or anything like that. I mean, I would not stay wrapped up in the lies, and I would not, I would fight in every single way possible to keep trying to bring these things to the forefront. It doesn't work. At least as a child, it didn't work. And, you realize as a child that you have no control over your life whatsoever. My life was controlled completely by Polly, and she used every method available to do that. She used religion. She was part of Jehovah's Witness cult, which, like, is already, like, messed up anyway. They have a very long and sordid history of child sexual abuse and covering up child sexual abuse, and I was no exception to that, and shunning people, and it's just a really kind of like gross thing to be involved in. But narcissists use absolutely everything and anything possible in order to maintain that control and in order to justify the punishment, which is really just abuse that they dish out. You know, and for my mother, it's always been this, like, it's Jehovah's Witness is always like this place that she goes to, like, you know, to get out of marriages, almost like that she knows that no one else is going to want to do it. And so she is actually, she's back involved with Jehovah's Witness again. I'll get into that later, but it's just a manipulation tactic for her, and it is just so grossly toxic. So anyway, so everything about my life was really a lie. And I knew that. Like, I knew that my father was not the father of my siblings. And this would be denied, and that truth would finally come out. I think it was after I was 40. I think it was like 42. So that truth finally came out. And even with concrete evidence, scientific evidence, she still denies it, right? And so there's all of these things that when I was, I think 42, maybe 43, I literally began researching my life. I went back to the places I remembered. I began getting in touch with people from my past and asking a lot of questions and getting, you know, a lot of answers that I knew but had been denied. And the same patterns like became very true of my siblings, where narcissists live by the perception, like this public perception, not by reality at all. And so that has been like kind of this constant in my life. When you're groomed by narcissists, you attract narcissists. It becomes like this really disgusting, like, you know, pattern that happens. And it's hard to understand until you really get to the place, you know, in therapy where somebody goes, I know exactly what you're dealing with, and does this sound familiar? And for me, that didn't happen until I turned age 40. So I began finding all of these truths out and kept pushing and pushing. And then about 2.5 years ago, one of my children came forward and began telling me the abuses that they had suffered. And at the same time, or a very close time, my oldest niece, who I was very close with my entire life, she began coming to myself and my husband more and more, and sharing a lot of really disturbing things with us. And it came out almost exactly this day, which is why it's such a big day, that she was dealing with very severe incestuous thoughts, and the incestuous things that had happened in my family were very deep and disgusting. And the things that I found out through this entire interaction really was like this freedom for me, you know, because a big, huge factor of truth and of the future are patterns that are handed down. And so, you know, my mom is a very, very sick woman, and she subjected her children to terrible things. And we, you know, were forced to sleep with men, and she benefited from it. And then my siblings would benefit from it. And I was just made to feel like repulsive, okay? And so a lot of this stuff finally began being confirmed and affirmed to me. And then we found out kind of that it was at an even greater depth than what we realized. And it began this total breaking away for myself, for my youngest child, and for my husband, freedom in so very many ways. And as I began healing We moved away from where we had been, very far away from where we had been, and I really began healing. Then I knew kind of more than ever that I really wanted to have an ongoing hand in helping people heal, which is something I've done really my entire life. So I was kicked out of my house when I was 17 years old. I came home one day and my stuff was on the front porch. I didn't have a car. I didn't even have a driver's license. There was no forewarning, nothing. I had been kicked out of my house very unceremoniously. I had nothing. I had nowhere to go. I couldn't even get in touch with somebody at that point. A lot of my personal things were stolen from me and all this stuff. And, I ended up having to get a GED because I had been an international baccalaureate student, and that was not offered at other schools. And so it was just kind of this really super messed up deal, right? And, I was very obviously at that point, ADHD, but I had a very traumatized nervous system and had lived the entirety of my life, in abusive situations and such, and was in some ways very advanced. But the reality was, I was also just not prepared at all to live on my own. I had no idea, I'd never been given any practical life skills. So I ended up becoming a certified personal trainer and getting into fitness. And I was also working retail at the time and in a very unhealthy situation with someone else who was, not a super great person, which is where through that I would eventually meet the father of my oldest son as well. I'll get into that later. So I was doing personal training and I was working retail and just was really busy. I went all of the time. After years of not sleeping, I was very accustomed to not sleeping. I got promoted in the retail industry and was moved to Chicago. And then I moved a lot, which I understand now was, my way of feeling safe and feeling protected, because I had never felt safe or secure in my life. So I've always been in careers of service and always had a very entrepreneurial mind. In addition to that, I always worked more than one job, or I would work more than one job and go to school. It was just the way, that I kind of dealt with things. So as I was going through all of this and really finally began to understand these things and therefore understand my life more, I knew I wanted to continue to help people who had suffered, especially childhood trauma, women in particular who have gone through similar situations, especially where, they've been alienated from their kids or scapegoats who have taken all of the burden and responsibility from their families, and just help to build a real life of true healing and offer back, especially to women, so much of what had been offered to me and still is. My siblings, they don't have true friendships or relationships in their life, and they can, because when you stay hidden and your life is, made up of appearances, you can't really have friends. And I've been very blessed. I have very close friends and relationships. And while I stayed hidden for a very long period of time, there are this group of people who know me very well, and who've often literally like carried me through these times in life. And without them, you know, I wouldn't be alive, and I'm very, very well aware of that. So as I began healing and building this company, I went to a lot of my mentors and friends who are also, you know, very entrepreneurial minded, and talked to them about how I wanted to offer things and what I wanted to do, and started kind of moving forward at a very fast pace, which is something that I do, right? And then I slowed down because this was a place where I wanted to make sure that everything that I was offering, I was able to give completely. And everything I was offering, it was in full integrity to help people heal and have freedom and move on. So my husband and I have been working on my website for a while, and I had one last year that I ultimately kind of ended up scratching completely as I began doing more trainings and certifications and things like that. And the model now that I want to offer, so we'll be launching our website here in the next week-ish, but the model that I'm going to go by is that you pay what you can, because there were so many times where I couldn't pay anything at all, and people still stepped up to help me. There were times that I was able to help people and pay for their, you know, help, therapy, whatever it was, that I was fortunate to be able to help them. And so in this model, which is something that's used by a few companies that I work very closely with, no one is denied healing or tools or anything that leads them on a path of becoming strong and independent and finding hope and resilience in their life. It also allows other people to sponsor care for those. In my consulting business, it's always proven to be, you know, fortunately for me, something that has been able to provide. And so I found out that by combining a lot of these things together, it just allowed a lot more people to get the help. And because I do a lot of collaborative work with people in my industry who are so much better than I am and have a lot to offer, my work with them also allows more people to be really reached, in order that they have such a greater access for so many tools of healing. I am such a firm believer that the right to heal and the right to get healthy should be afforded to everyone. And I felt like it would be very hypocritical of me to kind of not back that as my belief. And so I feel very strongly about this method, and I'm really excited for everything that's going to happen. And I will be getting into my first brick and mortar this year, which will allow me to not just work with a community that I'm currently in, which is a really great community that has a great deal of need, especially in the Native American cultures that are here where I live, but also working with educators who are so overburdened and overtaxed right now, creating trauma-informed classrooms. And I'm working as the secretary of the NAACP Criminal Justice Division, which is just a huge honor. That is also allowing me to not just work with inmates in a very unique manner and perspective, but it's allowing me to bring trauma-informed care into incarceration facilities And I have the honor to work with the employees of those facilities as well. And that has proven to be a very beautiful thing, very unexpected, and they're just so grateful. I also won a scholarship, a full scholarship through the Psychological Yoga Foundation that is actually based out of Australia. But because of the work that I do, especially with Native Americans here in my area, and working, for restorative justice and doing yoga-related initiatives there, they awarded me a full scholarship for mental health and yoga for that entire class and certification, which is just a huge blessing that I also hope to bring in and back that or saddle that up with work that I do with Prison Yoga Project as well. So it's a lot of different collaborative fields and areas and aspects that I'm just really passionate about. In addition to that, the writing I've been doing, has been offered in terms of book publishing and some other writing opportunities as well. So it's been a very long, kind of tedious road to get here, and yet from everything that began 2.5 years ago, and specifically from an incident that happened to this day almost exactly 2 years ago, to see the turnaround in that time is really profound. So I invite you, if you're interested, you can follow me here on Facebook. It's Amanda J. Cox. You can follow me on Instagram at Victim Impact Statements or at Amanda J. Cox 75. And I also have a YouTube channel, which is some of the videos to watch, especially if you're familiar with my family or my background. But that is Becoming Human 725 on YouTube. And it's a lot of sharing of my story and how I came to understand psychopathy and narcissistic personality disorder in particular, the impact it had on my life and the things that I realized from all of those situations, and how it changed not just me as a person, but how it really changed kind of everything about my future as well, and how it led me to be kind of in a place of constant service to people, and then to the place where I finally started giving myself that same service and healing as well. So I invite you to follow on any and all of those platforms. Give me any feedback. If you have any questions ever, please let me know. You can reach out anywhere that you'd like. And if you're interested in getting into more therapeutic healing, yoga healing, especially somatic or experiential work, which is what I do most of, please reach out and let me know. I hope that you're all doing great and taking care of yourselves, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.